Arsenal's defence this season seems way weaker than it was last season. In this video, we're going to explore some of the reasons why, but I want to hear your opinions as well, so let me know. So we're going to go through areas of the team, and I think some of these areas are massively affecting our defensive structure. So we're going to start with a goalkeeper, right? So in terms of Raya and Ramsdale, there's probably not too much difference in terms of ability. I would prefer Aaron Ramsdale in goal. Some people prefer Raya, and that's okay, but changing the keeper has affected our defence. You know, you're having to build a new chemistry, you're having to work with new personnel, and there's times and points in games where you're still having to work out what each player does. So the cohesion isn't there, the understanding isn't quite there yet, and maybe the communication isn't at the same level that it was last season. And no matter what you think about the goalkeeping situation, when you change a goalkeeper, it changes the defensive structure because goalkeepers have different ways of playing, they have different strengths and weaknesses, and in my opinion, Ramsdale's strengths complemented this Arsenal defence way more. And then you couple all them reasons with the fact that Ray has let in some easy goals, he's made some big mistakes, you're bound to have a drop-off in terms of defensive quality. So the goalkeeper's reason one, but reason two is injuries. So we've been unfortunate enough to pick up a few key injuries this season. One in particular I'll speak about a bit later in the video, but the two I want to focus on in this segment are Tomiyasu and Jurrien Timber, and these two injuries have massively affected Arsenal's ability to defend in key moments of certain games. Now Timber was massively unfortunate. He got injured in the first game of the season, and this was a player who wasn't brought in to be a bench option. This was a player who was brought in to be in the starting 11. The plan was Ben White right back, Gabriel and Saliba centre back, and Jurrien Timber was going to be operating on that left hand side. We know with that left-hand side defender, he doesn't necessarily operate as an out-and-out left-back. He likes to drift into the central midfield area and just overload the middle of the park. Zinchenko's good at that, but Jurrien Timber offers much more because he's just as technical as Zinchenko, just as good on the ball, but his defensive work is way better. He's faster, he's better in the tackle, and he reads the game defensively a lot more than Zinchenko can. Now Tomiyasu as well, his injury's been massive because he may not be as good on the ball as Zinchenko, but in them games where you're going to be defending a lot more than you are attacking, if you're playing, say, Liverpool at Anfield or Manchester City at the Etihad, Tomiyasu is perfect for that left-back position because you can sit deeper. The way you're playing is inviting pressure onto yourselves a lot more, so you need players that are better defensively than they are offensively. And that's where Tomiyasu would have come in. He would have been picked over Zinchenko a lot of times this season, especially when games are starting to shift. Say if you're 1-0 up and it's the 60th minute, the momentum's changing. Say if you're playing an Aston Villa and the pressure is getting on top of you, you would swap Zinchenko for a Tomiyasu because you understand for the remainder of the game, you're probably going to be defending a lot more than you're going to be attacking, so you need the stronger defenders on the pitch. So reason number two is going to be injuries to Tomiyasu and Jurrien Timber, and reason number three is transfers. Now in this section I'm exclusively going to be talking about defensive transfers. There obviously is a midfield transfer that has affected the way we play. We'll be mentioning that in the next section, but for this one I'm talking about outgoings of Arsenal players last season, Kieran Tierney and Rob Holding. And you might be thinking, what are you talking about? These players weren't good enough. But let me explain to you a reason why this has changed our defence massively, okay? And no one I've seen online has mentioned this so far. So there was points in last season where Tierney would play over Zinchenko. He didn't usually start many of the games, but like I've already mentioned, at times where the sort of momentum shifts and maybe you're having to defend a lot more than you was, he used to switch out Zinchenko for Kieran Tierney. But more so than that, Rob Holding's departure has had a much more significant impact on Arsenal's defence. Let me tell you why. I think a lot of people have forgot what Rob Holding was last season. Now, Rob Holding was never good enough to start, but there was a saying going around the Arsenal fan base that a lot of people have forgot. Do you remember when you're winning a game, you would bring Rob Holding on for the last 20 minutes to see the game out? It was common knowledge, if you're winning 1-0 or 2-1, online there would be a mass of people calling for Rob Holding to be added to the game so we can see the game out. We would make a defensive back five, Rob Holding would slot in, and Arsenal would comfortably see the game out, conceding very few chances. And I can't believe no one's mentioning this because we don't have that option this season. Rob Holding left the club, and not once this season can I remember Arteta doing that with a player, having that guy that he can rely on, the guy he can depend on to bring on for the last 15-20 minutes. When Arsenal's defence needs shoring up, he would bring the guy on and then see the game out. He's tried it with Kiwior, but he obviously doesn't trust him enough because he hasn't used that option more than a couple of times. And I think Tomiyasu probably would have been that guy, but this is where the injury problem strikes again and hurts Arsenal defensively. So reason number three is the departure of defensive personnel, Rob Holding and Kieran Tierney. And reason number 4 is the weakening of Arsenal's midfield. Now, when I say weakening, I don't necessarily mean ability. I mean actual weakening in terms of strength, because Saka left the club and you brought in Havertz. Now, we can have a discussion on who's better offensively, but if we're just looking at purely defensive abilities, no one in the world can convince me that Havertz is anywhere near the ability that Saka is defensively. Saka reads the game much better. He's way better in the tackle, stronger in the tackle. You know, he's played a lot of games as Arsenal's number 6. So when you swap that more defensive player out for a more attacking player, you're automatically making your defence weaker, because you're going to have less options for when you are forced to defend. Now, for some reason, this season, Mikel Arteta has gone for the approach of playing one defensive midfielder and then 2 attacking midfielders. Last season, it was more of a 2 defensive-minded midfielders. One was playing slightly further forward in Saka, but you also had the comfort of knowing that he is a defensive player. And this season, you've just got 2 out-and-out forward players. So when you're attacking, it's great. But this season, we haven't been as attacking as we was last season. So we've been defending a lot more. And now we don't have the players who are able to deal with that more defensive work. And that's why it will be interesting when Partey comes back, because I think he will inevitably end up playing Partey, Rice and Odegaard. And I think that will resemble the midfield of last season a lot more than what we're currently operating within this Arsenal setup at the minute. So reason number 4 is the midfield weakness. And reason number 5 is simply pressure. It's human nature that when you have a drop off in a certain area, the eyes on you will be magnified. So people are now noticing all these little mistakes, and then that heaps more pressure on the players because they realise they're being watched, and at that point it's cyclical. You're making mistakes, people are noticing more, and that in turn heaps more pressure on you. But not only pressure in that regard, you now have the added pressure of people realising and commenting on the fact that you are now one of the best defensive teams in the league. You have defenders like Gabriel and Saliba, who in many people's opinions is the best defensive partnership in world football. So people are going to be micro-analysing every single thing that you do to either heap praise on or throw shade at. And that's why number 5 on this list is simply pressure. Like I said, I'd love to know your opinions, so let me know in the comments section and like and subscribe.